After I bailed him out of jail at 2 a.m., he looked me in the eye and said, "You were supposed to do that. You're my wife." That was the moment I stopped being his. Please stay with me as I tell you my story, and please do not forget to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing with your loved ones. This wasn't the first time I had picked him up from behind bars. It was the third. The first time, I believed his tears. The second time, I believed his lies. But by the third, all I had left was blind hope, and even that was fading. I had stood by him through it all. The mood swings, the missed birthdays, the relapses. I told myself I married the man he could be, not the man he had become. I picked up double shifts, sold my car, and even swallowed my pride to borrow money from my sister, all to post his bail. When I finally handed over that last dollar and saw him walk out, I expected, maybe not gratitude, but something. Instead, he gave me that smug look and uttered those words like they were law. "You're my wife. That's your job." I nodded. I said nothing, but in that moment, something inside me shifted. I knew this would be the last time I saved him, because he didn't want to be saved. He wanted a servant, not a partner. He wanted a shield, not a soulmate. That night, as he passed out on the couch and I cleaned up his mess, again, I realized I had been clinging to an idea of love that only I was fighting for. Love doesn't talk down to you. Love doesn't drain you. And love, sure as hell, doesn't treat loyalty like a chore. So I sat down, wrote everything I could remember. Dates, incidents, bank transfers. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew this. The next time he found himself in a cell, he'd be there alone. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning, and I promise, it only gets better from here. Days after I bailed him out of jail, I found something I was never meant to see. A second phone, hidden under the bathroom sink, tucked behind an old bottle of expired shampoo. It wasn't even locked. The moment I powered it on, the truth spilled out like poison. There were messages, hundreds. Some were from the night before his arrest. Others went back months. He wasn't just talking to one woman. There were three. Each had their own nickname, their own thread of lies, and he played each of them like he had played me. Sweet talk, promises, pictures, disgusting pictures. But what shattered me most wasn't the cheating itself. I think, deep down, I always suspected something. It was the fact that one of the women was someone I knew, someone I worked with. We had shared lunch breaks. She had helped plan my birthday party just 2 months ago. She had looked me in the eye and smiled, all while sneaking around with my husband behind my back. I stared at their messages, heart pounding, reading how they laughed about me. He told her I was too emotional and always in his business. He told her bailing him out of jail was the least I could do. I felt sick. When I confronted him, phone in hand, he didn't even flinch. He looked at me and said I was being paranoid, that it was just a joke between friends, that I was looking for something to be mad about. Gaslighting, just like always. Except this time, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stared at him, nodded once, and walked out of the room. That was the night I started documenting everything. I took pictures of the messages. I backed up the phone. I started recording conversations, casual ones, calculated ones. I kept track of where he went, what he spent, who he called. I acted normal, quiet, compliant. He thought he had won, that his manipulation still worked. He didn't notice that every word he said was going into a folder I named Freedom. It wasn't just about the cheating anymore. It was about how many times I had sacrificed my peace, my money, my sanity, for a man who saw me as nothing more than a utility, a convenience. And he didn't know it yet, but the woman he thought was broken had already started rebuilding, brick by quiet brick. It happened on a Tuesday. I had just left work early and stopped by the local pharmacy to pick up a prescription. As I was walking toward the entrance, I saw him, my husband, standing outside with a woman I didn't recognize. They weren't just chatting. He had his arms around her like it was the most natural thing in the world, like he belonged there. And then a small child, no older than 2, waddled up and hugged his leg. The woman smiled, kissed my husband on the cheek, and the child looked up and said, clear as day, "Daddy." I froze. My world tilted. I didn't scream. I didn't march up to them. I didn't even blink. Instead, I turned around and walked quickly to my car, got in, and pulled out of the parking lot. But I didn't go far. I parked down the street and waited. My hands were shaking. My stomach was turning. But I knew I needed to know more. A few minutes later, I saw them get into a car together. I followed from a distance, careful not to be noticed. They drove across town and pulled into a quiet little complex. Not a hotel, an apartment. I watched him unlock the door with a key, pick up the toddler, and walk in like he lived there. And that's when it hit me. He did. He wasn't just cheating. He had a second life, a second home, a second family. I stayed there for a long time, watching the windows, trying to make sense of how deep this betrayal ran. Every late night, every unexplained weekend, every call he ignored, it all made sense now. He had been splitting his life between us like it was normal, like I was the side piece. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. I went home, played the doting wife, and acted like nothing had changed. I smiled. I cooked dinner. I kissed him goodnight. And every second, I was planning how to expose everything, how to burn the double life he'd built to the ground. Because I wasn't going to scream or cry or beg. I was going to make sure when he lost everything, he knew exactly who made it happen. After finding out about the second family, I knew emotions wouldn't win this war. Evidence would. So I went silent and started building my case. The first thing I did was install cameras. Small, motion-activated ones. Nothing obvious. I placed them in the living room, kitchen, even near the office where he kept our paperwork. Then I started logging everything. Every dollar that left our joint account, every receipt, every transaction he tried to hide. I became my own private investigator, methodical, cold, and absolutely focused. That's when I discovered something far worse than infidelity. He wasn't just lying to me emotionally. He was stealing from me financially. Months ago, I'd noticed some of my paychecks didn't seem to stretch as far, but I chalked it up to bills or groceries. Now digging deeper, I found the truth. He had set up a secret account in his name and had been quietly funneling my income into it through linked transfers and forged authorizations. The kicker, he had forged my signature on multiple documents. Some looked like credit card applications. Others were linked to loans I never took out. When I looked up the balances, my stomach dropped. He had racked up debt in my name, tens of thousands. And legally, I was tied to every dollar. I knew I couldn't handle this alone anymore. I booked a consultation with a lawyer, hands trembling as I laid out what I had. She looked over everything, the photos, the bank records, the documents, and gave it to me straight. I was potentially liable. If I didn't act fast, I could be held responsible for debt I didn't create. Worse, if he defaulted or got arrested again, I could be on the hook for everything. But then she said something else. You have time and you have power. If you keep building this right, we can flip the game on him. That's all I needed to hear. From that day forward, every fake smile I gave him, every dinner I cooked, every time I laughed at his dumb stories, it was strategy. I opened a private account. I began shifting my direct deposit. I gathered every document, labeled every file, saved every clip from the cameras. He thought he was playing me. He didn't realize I was stacking the deck. And soon he'd learn I wasn't the victim anymore. By the time I sat down with my lawyer for the second time, I was no longer unsure. I was done. The betrayal, the theft, the double life, it had all been building toward this. And now, with every piece of evidence in place, it was time to plan my exit, carefully and legally. My lawyer laid everything out clearly. First step, financial separation. I opened a new bank account under my name only and rerouted my direct deposit. Every dollar I earned from that moment on was mine, untouched by him. We filed the paperwork to separate our finances officially, which meant any new debt he tried to rack up wouldn't be tied to me. I also started transferring small amounts of money out of our joint account. Nothing he'd notice at first, but enough to build my cushion. Next, I began removing valuables from the house, family jewelry, important documents, the deed copies, birth certificates, heirlooms, anything I wouldn't want to vanish in the chaos of a breakup. I didn't make a scene. I didn't change routines. I acted exactly the same, but every day, something small left the house and went into storage. And I told no one, not my friends, not my sister, not even my mother. I knew that if a single word slipped out, he'd sense it. He might empty the accounts, disappear, or worse, turn violent. So I smiled, nodded through his nonsense, and kept playing my role. My lawyer helped me draw up the divorce papers, carefully crafting them to protect the assets I had just secured. We added a restraining order request just in case. We included documentation of financial fraud, infidelity, and emotional manipulation. Everything that would position me as the wronged party, not just emotionally, but legally. At night, I lay in bed beside him, pretending to sleep, while my mind was racing with checklists and backup plans. I was calm, but calculating. patient, but prepared. What he didn't know, what he never saw coming, was that the woman he thought was too weak to leave had already left him in every way that mattered. He thought he had control, but I had the exit plan, and the day I set it in motion would be the day he realized just how much I had taken back. Not just my money or my name, but my power. I planned his birthday dinner like I had every other year, carefully, thoughtfully, like a good wife would. He thought it was a grand gesture of love. What he didn't know was that it would be his final performance as my husband. I rented a private room at his favorite restaurant, invited all his friends, his co-workers, even some family. I smiled through the planning, picked out the cake, arranged the decorations, all while knowing what was coming. He had no clue, not even a hint. That night, he walked in grinning, soaking up the attention as everyone shouted, "Surprise!" He kissed me on the cheek and thanked me like he was proud of the obedient little wife who always came through. He laughed, drank, told the same old stories, while everyone toasted to many more years, and I just waited. Once dessert was served, I stood up and tapped my glass. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I began. "I know you're all here to celebrate another year of his life, but tonight, I'm actually here to celebrate the end of something." The room fell quiet. I pulled out the divorce papers and placed them in front of him. His smile cracked, confused at first, then quickly defensive. But before he could speak, I turned to the TV in the corner of the room, the one I had asked the restaurant to hook up for a birthday slideshow. Except it wasn't a slideshow of family memories. It was every screenshot, every message, every woman, pictures of him with the other child, bank transfers, the forged signatures, a photo of him outside the apartment he thought I'd never find. One by one, they flashed across the screen. The room was silent, except for the sound of his life unraveling. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "Oh my God." His best friend got up and walked out. A few others followed. Even his own brother couldn't look at him. He just sat there, jaw tight, red-faced, completely stunned. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He had nothing. No lies left to cover him. No stories to spin. For the first time since I met him, he looked cornered. I turned to him, calm as ever, and said, "Happy birthday. You're finally getting exactly what you deserve." And then I walked out, head high, heart light, and absolutely free. A few weeks after the birthday dinner, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was one of the women he'd been cheating with, the youngest one, the one he swore was just a friend's cousin when I first confronted him. But this message wasn't angry or defensive. It was terrified. She told me she had no idea he was married when they met. She thought she was in love. She had just turned 18 recently, but when their relationship started, she had still been underage. I felt a chill run through me. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was criminal. She sent me screenshots, voice messages, even a photo of a birthday card he gave her, with a date on it that proved everything. She had already gone to the police. They were building a case, and now she wanted to know if I would speak with them too. I agreed without hesitation. When I handed over the evidence I had, the messages, timestamps, photos, and records, the officer barely blinked. "This isn't going to be hard," he said. "Thank you for your cooperation." I didn't tell anyone. I didn't warn him. I just waited. And then one morning, right as he was leaving the house, the flashing lights showed up outside our front door. 2 police officers stood waiting, calm but firm. He laughed at first, thought it was some kind of mistake. Then they read him the charges. His face went pale. They cuffed him right there in the driveway. He looked back at me as they put him in the car, eyes wide, panicked, like maybe I'd come running after him like I always had. Maybe I'd fix it one more time. But I just stood in the doorway and watched. He called me that night from jail. I didn't answer. He tried again and again. I let every call go to voicemail. No more bail money, no more lawyers, no more loyalty to a man who used mine against me. The same system he thought would never touch him had finally reached him. And this time, I was nowhere near the wreckage. The tables had turned, and for the first time, he was the one sitting alone, wondering how it all fell apart. I didn't have to lift a finger to destroy him. He did it all by himself. A few days after his arrest, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. It was his mother. She sounded exhausted, like she had aged 10 years since the last time we spoke. At first, she tried to sound calm, but within minutes, she was pleading, begging me to drop the charges, to think about his future, and to not destroy the family. I let her talk. When she paused long enough for me to respond, I said only this. Did you know he had a second family? A toddler calling him daddy? That he drained my bank account and forged my signature on credit applications? Silence. I continued. He didn't just cheat. He lied, stole, manipulated, and committed crimes. And I have proof. Do you still want me to think about the family? She stammered, said she didn't know any of that he told them I was hysterical and trying to ruin his life out of spite. I could hear his father in the background, urging her to hang up. She didn't, but she also didn't defend me anymore. The call ended quietly. I didn't think much of it until a few weeks later when my lawyer forwarded me a financial document. His legal fees were being paid in full from his parents' trust fund. That alone wasn't surprising, but tucked into the file was a message from their lawyer indicating they were willing to vouch for his character, deny the allegations, and assist in negotiating a lighter sentence. They knew exactly what they were doing. That's when I decided to release everything. The screenshots, the camera footage, the bank statements, even the email between his mother and their family attorney, trying to shift blame onto me. I gave it all to my lawyer and let her handle it. At the next court hearing, their involvement came up fast. When the judge asked about the funds and their denial of wrongdoing, we presented the timeline, the deception, the complicity. They sat frozen in the back of the courtroom as the reality set in. Their son wasn't a victim, and now, neither were they. They thought they could cover for him. They thought money would make the problem disappear. But this time, money couldn't erase the truth, and I wasn't staying silent to protect anyone anymore. The courtroom was cold, but I walked in calm, collected, and fully prepared. He, on the other hand, wore the same smug expression he always did when he thought he could charm his way out of consequences. As he sat beside his defense attorney, he kept glancing over at me, probably expecting tears, begging, or some last-minute collapse. But I had nothing left to give him. No fear, no forgiveness. He opened with a statement meant to twist everything, claimed I had emotional issues, said I was paranoid, obsessed, vengeful, told the judge I was unstable and had blown things out of proportion. He even tried to imply I had made up the underage girl's story, despite police reports clearly stating otherwise. But my lawyer didn't flinch, because our case was airtight. We had screenshots, emails, financial records, video footage from inside our own home, and sworn statements from 3 different women he'd lied to. We had copies of the forged documents, proof of fraud, and evidence of how he siphoned money into secret accounts. It was all catalogued, time-stamped, and neatly presented. The judge flipped through our binder with visible frustration building in her expression. When it was our turn, my lawyer calmly walked the court through each betrayal, each violation, each crime. At one point, his attorney tried to object, claiming the slideshow of messages was prejudicial. The judge overruled it. The moment of justice came when the judge delivered her decision. She granted me full control over our remaining joint assets, citing financial abuse and fraud. She ordered all accounts in my name to be protected from his access. Then came the criminal counts: identity theft, financial fraud, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Each charge was upheld. He was officially convicted. His jaw slackened. That confident expression finally cracked. He looked around the courtroom like someone would save him. His lawyer, the judge, maybe even me. But I just sat there, watching him realize, piece by piece, that his lies had run out of road. When the hearing ended, I stood, gathered my things, and walked out of the courtroom, free. Not just from the marriage, the debt, or the lies, but from him, completely. He tried to destroy my life. Instead, he handed me everything I needed to rebuild it better, stronger, and without him ever dragging me down again. After the court dates, the noise, and the wreckage he left behind, I packed up what little I still called mine and moved to a new city. No one knew my story there. No one looked at me with pity or suspicion. It was quiet, peaceful. For the first time in years, I could breathe without holding something in. I used the money I reclaimed in the divorce to open a small business, something I had always dreamed of but had been too drained, too trapped to pursue while I was with him. With each passing day, I felt lighter, stronger, more like myself than I had in years. Eventually, I began sharing my story, carefully, honestly, and without bitterness. Word spread, and soon I started hearing from other women. Some were friends of friends. Others were strangers I'd never met, but had somehow also crossed paths with him. One of them said, I was married to him too. He told me you were unstable, and then came another, and another. Turns out I wasn't the only wife, not the only one he lied to, cheated on, or stole from. But instead of breaking me, that truth solidified everything. I had done the right thing. I had walked away, taken my life back, and exposed the truth, not just for me, but for every woman who had been manipulated by the same charming, soulless man. Now, I sleep soundly. My home is filled with peace, not tension. My time is mine. My business is growing. My joy is quiet but deeply real. And when people ask what happened to him, I just smile, not out of spite, but because I finally feel free. And I say, he got what he deserved. Do you think I did the right thing by exposing everything and walking away? Or should I have tried to forgive and rebuild? I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy stories like mine, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss out.